Hello, everyone, and welcome to this ISM Trust webinar, Working as a Musician in the Age of AI. My name is Ed Phelan, the Knowledge Hub and Research Manager here at the ISM. I'm going to be mediating our discussion today. I'm joined by Arhynn, Descy, and Lee Groves. Please feel free to use the chat function below. Tell us where you're coming from. Say hi to the other guests. Please do send in your questions using the Q&A function or the chat box. We'll answer them at the end of our discussion if you don't mind. So get them in at any point you want. This recording will be sent to you afterwards today, along with our survey on AI and copyright. So it would be very much appreciated if you could fill that in. I'm going to hand over to Arhynn and Lee to introduce themselves, and I'm going to come back to me to have a look at some AI plugins.
Shall I go first, as soon as I was mentioned first? Hi, I'm Arhynn Descy. I'm originally from South Africa and half French, but I've been living in the UK for a long time now. I started out my musical life as a piano teacher, and then became a film composer sort of later in life. And I also do a lot of teaching of master's level composition at ThinkSpace education. I think that sums me up quickly.
Hello, I'm Lee Groves. I like to describe myself these days as a recovering producer. But I left school in '89, did nothing but music since then. Various guises, producing, writing, mixing, mastering. And I kind of pivoted into film score stuff recently, and also kind of library and production music recently too, and just been sort of experimenting and researching as much about AI music generation and tools as possible in the last couple of years, getting ready for what's happening next.
Great, thanks, guys. Before we get into discussion, I'm going to do a brief overview of some AI tools that are out there. Some of you probably heard of these, some you might not have heard of. To start off, we're going to look at Splice. So Splice is a sampling program. You might use it if you're a producer. What they also offer is AI help or AI tools. So here is a program that allows you to compile samples using AI. So this is called a Splice Create. If we pick a style or a theme here, maybe cinematic, it will pull up 4 random samples that will work together. So if I click here, I click play. Is there any audio coming out there?
No, and we can't see your screen. Are we supposed to see your screen?
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let's try that one more time.
There you go. You can see your laptop now.
Okay.
Yeah, desktop.
Here's Splice. You can pick a style or a genre. We're going to click cinematic, and we'll pull up 4 samples. So these are random samples that the AI believes should work together. You can click refresh, say if you do not like this sample. Allows you to change keys, change BPM. To varying degrees of success, I would say, for this randomly generated piece of music. It allows you to add different loops. You can pick which instrument you want. Maybe you want some chords, maybe what guitar you'd want. It also gives you the option of uploading your own loop, so your own recorded file, and it will pick samples that it believes will work well with it. So this is one way where AI is a tool to help the composer or producer. We also have Suno, which you might have heard of. So Suno is pretty much like a large language model like ChatGPT, where we put in a phrase. So here I've put in a song about a webinar discussing a musician in the age of AI, and it's created 2 pieces of music. So let's click this one and see what it sounds like.
They said plug in your mic, but watch your tone. Your song's your spark, but it's not your own. The crowd's online, their faces pixel shown. The future hums in a monotone. Is it me You're the machine that shapes the dream unseen. Who's the artist, who's the ghost? Am I the same?
So that from a single phrase has created lyrics, has created produced song around the theme of working as a musician in AI, maybe we might say. If we just go back here now, 1 second. So this leads to something you might have seen in the news recently, which is a band called The Velvet Sundown. They've got news headlines everywhere, and they've also got a lot of Spotify streams. So The Velvet Sundown appeared out of nowhere. They didn't say anything about themselves. No one knew if it was a real band. These are the kind of images they'd used. And they've amassed 1.3 million monthly listeners and 54,000 followers, listeners all around the world, and appeared on many Spotify playlists. They've recently updated their bio to say The Velvet Sundown is a synthetic music project guided by human creative direction and composed, voiced, and visualized with the support of artificial intelligence. What exactly that means, it's hard to tell. Of what type of tools do they use? Do they use something like Suno, where you type in a phrase and you get a full piece of music, or do they use more collaborative tools? We're going to discuss all of this today anyway, and we'll be about 40 minutes, and then at the end we'll have a Q&A, so please do get your questions in. So to start us off, I was going to ask the question of using AI ethically. Is it possible? What does it mean? Is there such a thing as ethical AI? Is Suno and Splice the same, or is using one different from using the other? If there's any thoughts.
I've had quite a lot of experience using Splice actually in the past, usually for finding little loops and tune starters and dragging them in, and kick drums or little sound effects. I'm doing a project at the moment that needs lots of haunted house sound effects and stuff. That particular thing that you demonstrated isn't particularly intelligent. It basically you demonstrated sort of drums, bass. So it basically picks 4 random items and puts them together. It's not particularly clever. It's more kind of like, we can take a drum track, or if you want to replace the drum track, we'll find another one in the same tempo. Suno is a whole other kettle of fish completely. No one's really sure, I don't think, how it even works really. Someone described it to me, and Arhynn, you might have something to say about this. Instead of, let's say, when we make pieces of music, drum track, bass track, vocals, it's almost sculpting from a large piece of marble. It's chipping away the edges until you get the shape that it's after, which is a pretty unusual way of making music, but it does seem to work to a certain extent. So that's kind of what I thought about that.
Yeah, so from the point of view of can we use it ethically, or is it possible? There are programs that are claimed to be ethical. That's the one thing. I think Loudly is one that claims to be ethical, that it's been trained on data that they're allowed to use, etc. I would always dig a little more, because you don't know at what level of ethics that they're operating at. And I would say that if you really did want to use AI, that go for the programs that you download onto your own computer that you can use offline, that you're basically not feeding the beast. In other words, you're using your own music to create your own AI stuff, or your own, anything you do is only feeding your own machine, rather than being used to train everything out there on the internet. So in terms of ethical, yeah, I'd say you can do that if you're, and for example, there's I think Synthplant and XLM Life, they take sounds and analyze them, and then you can take strands and, you know, create sounds that we've never heard before and stuff. So that's a whole area where you're not dealing with other people's copyright, where you're actually being creative and generating something completely new using AI. So in terms of using it ethically, I would say those are options, but I would say definitely do your research before you use anything.
I think as well, there's a company that I do some bits and pieces for called Descy, which is DAACI, and they're developing a whole bunch of tools that are kind of more MIDI based. So in other words, they're not audio, and they're doing things like you can literally train it with your particular styles, and you'll end up actually jamming with yourself with some of these tools, which is a really great way of getting, because it kind of knows your colors and your shapes, and it will start to use those back at you, and you can start to play off those, which is a really ethical way of doing it. Yeah, I mean, the ethics thing, I guess we'll probably get into that quite deeply, but as Arhynn said, it's an absolute minefield. And you absolutely made a brilliant point, which was if you're able to use tools that keep it locally on your own machine, you're then not diving into all the training data stuff, which is a real nightmare at this point. So the tools do exist. I think you'll both agree as well, even since the three of us actually spoke previously, there's so much new stuff coming out now. There are so many new packages, so many new websites and bits of software that even by the time people see this, there's probably a whole other swathe of new ethical, some ethical, some unethical bits of software. So as Arhynn said, it's a really good idea to research what you're interested in, see how deep the ethics go. MIDI is a good one though, in the sense because it doesn't really use recorded sounds. It just uses MIDI data, which you can use any sound with, which is quite a good way of keeping things. It's a better way of keeping things ethical, perhaps. I don't know. We'll see over time.
Yeah, and I think there's one, is it AIVA? I don't know how you would say that, but that one, I think once you've generated things, you can actually download them as stems,
Right.
and MIDI as well, and then put them in your DAW and do your own thing with it. So again, that's, you know, not feeding the beast. But I would also say just a slight other thing. People think that these generators are neutral, but they're not really neutral because it's based on AI education. So if you're using it as a generator for your initial material, just remember that actually it's coming from an AI educated robot. It's not neutral. It's not like throwing the dice and choosing something or picking a random sentence out of a book. It's not the same thing at all.
That is a very good point. Yeah, the training data side of things, it is, as we currently stand, is a very, very grey area. And again, maybe Ed is something you're going to talk about later on.
Yeah, but even on that point, if you sat with Suno for a while and put a few different phrases in and try to make it do wildly different things, you will start to see repetition and you'll start to hear sounds and timbres that sound very alike, even in different genres. And you can start to, if you really want to, you can put in, you know, I want a blues guitarist born into 2000s who sings about whatever, and you'll start to hear what they've trained on. And it is something to be aware of, yeah, that as much as
I actually remember seeing a video someone stuck up on YouTube. It was a long time ago and it got taken down, but it was basically, the prompt was four men from Liverpool, because obviously you can't. Did you ever see that? I mean, it was, and it literally, it sounded like McCartney. It had the same kind of cadences and chords as the Beatles. I think EMI actually ended up forcing it off of YouTube, but that just goes to show where the training data is. You know, one of the pitfalls of using training data is that it's much better, like Arhynn said, if you can train off yourself. And there are tools coming out very much more regularly that will look at your library and go, oh, I know what sort of stuff you do. Let's use just that as the training data. I do a lot of stuff with Source Audio, and they've just developed their music library. And they've just done a thing where if you're a music library, you can pay a subscription. If you're the actual library that owns all of your content, which is all original content, they will make new tracks from your existing library. Therefore, that's ethically trained because they actually take whatever gets used is actually divided equally amongst the writers. That's quite a new thing. It's taken quite a lot of effort to get them to get labels and things to sign up, but that's quite good. That's really worth looking out for. Anything that's, we need like a little logos, like ethically trained or something that you can stick on things. So
that's a brilliant idea. If that became something that was required. Same thing with people are talking about labeling it on Spotify, for example, if it's an AI track, to label it that.
Yeah.
Because then one is able to make choices, which I think is about the most important thing, is to be able to choose whether you're going to do this or not.
There is an organization named Fairly Trained, and that is the mission of them. However, what is ethical is a very gray area. So there's things on Fairly Trained that we might say, yes, they're licensing material, but it is still produced material that is competing with real musicians, I suppose. Just on that point as well, there's a great keyboard player, Jordan Rudess, who's developing his own system where he's just been inputting lots and lots of his own improvisations for half an hour and training an AI with MIT in America. And it's very interesting because it's all his data. He can use it to compose with himself. It's kind of a novelty project, but it does show you if, you know, the use of AI when it's not mass amounts of other people's data as well.
It's almost
So
like being able to clone yourself, isn't it, really? That would be that. So there's 2 of you, 3 of you, 5 of you working on the same project. That would be quite handy in some instances, especially with film score stuff when the deadlines are very tight and such like.
yeah, exactly. What do you think our responsibility as creators are then? Should it be someone else to regulate this, or should we decide now we shouldn't be using Suno, we shouldn't be using Splice if it's, you know, using their sample library and generating new samples and putting people out of work?
So you're asking
What's our
what's the
responsibility as
emphasis on
creators?
creatives with the use
Yes.
of this stuff? What should
Yeah.
we? Yeah.
Sorry, Lee, I was interrupting you. No,
That's right.
I feel very, very strongly that it's about time creators stood up and actually took responsibility. We and this is my opinion, we let streaming platforms get away with things. You know, before we knew it, we were in the middle of a streaming thing. And with the AI, we're at that point where we can actually take responsibility. So I think it's really important that whether you're going to use AI or not, definitely, is understand it, understand what's being done with it, understand your responsibility within it. And I can talk more about that in a bit, but it's your responsibility to read your contracts, to make informed decisions about things and to take action. But that's how I see it.
I think you nailed it. I think that is kind of all there is with regards to how we use it within our own kind of workflows. It's just understanding it and making that choice, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
There isn't a lot more you can do. Either you want to use it or you don't. I mean, in the sort of super fast, let's say, commercial world of music, there's a whole sort of, you know, I need something now. It needs to be a minute long, and we've got 2 hours before the client comes, kind of thing. You either sit and you're brilliant and you can churn something out really quickly, or you use AI. I think that's a slightly different approach. But I think we're talking about people who do music from the heart and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, you should. It's a choice that you make, I suppose, at the end of the day.
And also, I don't think we can rely on regulation or on, you know, I mean, people want to make money. The government, you know, politicians want to make money. Big tech companies want to make money. So that's always going to be their focus. So it is up to us to stand and fight things if we can, if there's action we can take, and make choices that are in line with your own ethics. If you love doing Suno style tracks and whatever, well, fine, go ahead and do it. But if you don't want to, then don't. I mean, it's as simple as that.
That's the bottom line, isn't it, really? Yeah.
I suppose I have some friends who work in the sync world, and they've seen situations where, especially for arrangements, their tracks are being put into some of these new programs that will split up their track and arrange it to a piece of video quite quickly, instantly. So the arranger and orchestrator's job is kind of thrown away. And they would worry about how do they stand out in the age of AI with all these tools coming along, where they feel like their expertise was what the AI tool now does instantly. Is it about the necessity for the expertise that AI can't replace?
That would be my approach to it now. If I was a younger person and I was kind of getting into this, and I think we touched upon this last time we all spoke, this idea of maybe developing your own style, being very, very good at one particular thing, perhaps, or looking around at the landscape, working out what AI isn't going to ever be good at. I mean, mixing and mastering, things like that. I mean, I do both of those things. I think that those days are numbered for humans to be doing that, and that's a double-edged sword, because the public are demanding one thing and the musicians are demanding another. So if you can be really good at a couple of really good things that don't feel like they're going to get replaced. I think that's probably the way to approach your music career these days. Be a really amazing instrumentalist, being a really amazing person to have in the studio when other people are making a track, be a brilliant producer, be a good vibe, or whatever it takes to something that AI won't be able to do. I think is a good bet if you were starting off in music these days. I think that would be a good thing to start doing.
I think you're absolutely right, Lee, about the develop an expertise to a certain level. There is an issue happening already with training AI, is that they're running out of data to train the AI on, and so they are going to need expert humans to keep training. Maybe not indefinitely, but I mean,
I read about that, and I was looking at it today actually. So it's called model collapse, and basically AI eats itself, so it runs out of things. It just does this, and then eventually it will collapse because there are no fresh ideas going into the system. So it is important to have original ideas, fresh ideas, whether you allow them to enter the AI world or not. It's probably not your decision at this point, but it hopefully will be if they get the copyright stuff sorted out. But yeah, it's what we always, why did people get into music in the first place? Because they love it. Do it because you love it. Do it with all the love and heart that you can, and make it the best. Make it as human as possible, really. And that stuff isn't going to go anywhere soon, I don't think.
Yeah, and to your point of, do it because you love it, but also I think the human element of it speaks to other humans. So I would say alongside that, develop your audience, because they'll buy into you and buy into your music. So it's really important to create sort of generate an audience. And
you probably have the same thing as me, Arhynn, when you're working on something. If you're sitting there, if you're sitting there on your own in the dark and you're getting off on it going, wow, I feel really moved and excited by this, the chances of somebody else feeling the same thing are very much higher than you just sitting there going. If you mope about with it, it's like, oh, I'm not really feeling this, then it's very unlikely you're going to be able to communicate that love through the music. So always make something that moves you in some way, I think.
Yeah. Well, they say, do the art for yourself. If it's something you want to be able to hear or see or whatever, then it's very likely other people will want to. And it's also, and I heard somebody speaking about this recently. So I think it was Nick Cave. I watched a video of him speaking about it, about the fact that what an artist brings to their work is the struggle, and AI will never struggle. It will never be able to bring that messy, chaotic.
It's the friction, isn't it? The friction.
Right. Yeah. And so that's the thing, that as creatives, you want to, whatever you're using, whether you're using AI or whatever, you want to develop your voice that has all of that in it. It's got all of your internal crazy messiness and quirks and mistakes and those kind of things, because that's the thing that's going to attract
that's the thing that makes it human. And it's back to what we were saying earlier about being really good at getting really good at something. Even if the instrument is your studio, make sure that somehow you've got a signature sound or a signature feel, or someone can point at that and go, you did that, didn't you? If you can find that one magic thing, that's quite rare, but it's also infinitely wide. If you can find that, then you're less, you're likely to cause more trouble for AI than not, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
I suppose it's a move towards, art for art's sake, isn't it? Rather than looking for a commercial avenue to work in, which is maybe a good change. You would worry about job security though, for I suppose people coming up, maybe going to study music now or study composition, and they're often trying to find their way into the industry and find a place for them where they can just make a living. Where there used to be avenues, clear avenues, and now it's more of a case of, well, become great at something, which is a bit of a daunting.
I wrote something down earlier, which was, what was it? Making money from music is a privilege, not a right. I really do believe that. I think that if anybody who's watching this, or even any of us who are involved in music professionally, the reason that you got into it from the first place, you didn't sit down and go, right, I'm going to make a load of money doing music. You sat down because you had something to say, you wanted to do music, you enjoyed music. You never sit down and go, I want to make a load of money. Then what happens is the money, you start to get paid for little jobs. Come and do this, 50 quid here. Come and mix my band, 100 quid there. Well, can you do a live thing? Can you do this? And then you start to go, well, actually, I could make something out of this. Then the trick is to not have the cynicism kick in, which generally tends to happen once you get a bit more successful, is not necessarily the right word, but the more you can devote your life to it, the more money that you can possibly make from it. And it starts to ruin it a bit. And you've got to keep that balance of, I'm doing this because I love it and not because I'm going to get, it's not a it's definitely not a get rich quick industry. So in terms of when you ask about job security, I know why you asked that, but I find that a really alien concept. Just this idea of someone going, right, I'm going to get into music and I want job security. It's like, it doesn't work like that. Get stuck in, roll your hands up, don't roll your hands up, that would look ridiculous. Roll your sleeves up, say yes to everything. Absolutely engorge yourself in music and see what comes from that. This idea of, okay, so being, say, like a front of house engineer at a concert, or being an audio visual technician, or being a mastering or mixing engineer, you still have to have the 10,000 hours of experience. So get stuck in and do that. In terms of job security, don't even consider it at that point. Just do it because you love it. If you can afford to do that, if you've got to get a job somewhere else and do music as a hobby, maybe the hobby will take over the music. That would be my advice, I think.
I'm going to dig a little bit at the words you used.
Go on.
Being my normal self, it's like, I don't think it's either a privilege or a right. I think people who get into any creative field do it because they have to. They have something to say to the world, and they just have to do it. And I think you should, because the world needs your voice if that's what you feel you have to do. But I do agree that the job security thing, I don't think job security has kind of existed for a long time.
No.
So it's not that. It's a weird combination, and I don't know, Lee, if you found this, but it's a weird combination of being practical and taking what you can and doing what you can to earn a living, but also having faith that the money will turn up. And it does turn up in most random kind of ways. So it's this weird combination. You've got to have both, I think.
Yeah, it's not like going into a career as a plumber. You know, as a plumber, you train, you go in, you do a job for 2 hours, you charge for 2 hours work, you walk away. In music, we put in hours and hundreds, thousands of hours with no return, and you just go, and you have to have that mentality of kind of, you never stop learning. I mean, I've been doing this 35 years, 36 years this year. You never stop learning. But what you do learn to do is to say no to certain things, say no to certain people, and try not to repeat the same mistakes. So in terms of job security, I mean, I've seen, I mean, God, when CDs were selling, people become millionaires. You'd sell 2 million CDs a week. They'd become very, very rich. That would go away. Then sync would kind of come in. And then, so everything is sort of constantly mutating and changing. And I would say now, even with things like AI, just even the way that music is consumed and created and valued is completely changed to how it was when I first started out. I just to summarize for me, it's been a journey. You certainly don't wake up. Who wakes up in the morning and goes, I'm going to be a sculptor and I'm going to make a load of money being a sculptor? You have to put in the 10,000 hours. You have to be told 9,000 times, no, that's rubbish. You're terrible. You'll never get anywhere. And you've got to get up off the floor and go and prove them wrong. That's not what happens in many other jobs. I don't think music is a very unique experience because you're dealing with so many other things than just an end result or a job. You've got all sorts of emotions and feelings, being in the right place at the right time, and the way technology is changing. So in terms of job security, yeah, I don't know. I have a real, I don't know. And just to bring it back to the AI thing, which is, I guess, is why we're all here. Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, AI is going to certainly put certain types of job at risk, I would say, for sure, 100%. So like I was saying, now you can go online. At the beginning, there were 10 mastering plugins and mastering websites. Now there are about 100. Mixing will be the next thing. There'll be like, because mixing you don't need to have, because the way humans are consuming music, I want the best sounding mix possible, and so do my clients. But the public don't really. No one even listens in stereo anymore, do they? I don't think most people have kind of got one Alexa in their and they listen to Frank Sinatra in their kitchen. Not quite true, but you get my drift. So yeah, that I think AI is going to replace certain things, but in terms of job security, I don't think there's any job security. I think there ever was, but I think if there was, I think it's worse now. That's my bit. I think.
Can I just go back to the responsibility thing? And it's slightly attached to this. So I think when we make the decisions on what to use and not to use, for example, as a composer, if you make the decision to do this all in the box with AI, then the people that you're cutting out are the musicians, the orchestrators, the score prep people, the studios, the mixing engineers, and everybody attached to those. It's a big pyramid of things. And so when you're making your choice, I think it's really important to know that and to make choices within that. So for example, if I'm pitching for something, I will allow myself to do the simplest, easiest route to somewhere. But if I've actually got the gig, then I hire people. And it's a decision I made, and whatever the fee I'm being paid, and I've actually landed up making no money out of something because I wanted to pay people, live musicians and a mixing engineer. So it's that responsibility, is knowing that you're at the top of a pyramid and what you're doing is affecting everybody beneath you. And
That's a really good point.
You do actually have some control over other people's job security in some kind of way. But also, as part of that, is the it's gone straight out of my head what I was going to say. Oh no, save me, Lee. What was I going to say?
No, I don't know what you're doing. I wish I could. If I could, I'd be on television earning fortune. But you make a really good point. Yeah, you do have a certain responsibility.
I've just remembered. Sorry.
Saved you.
It's about the what's going to happen is you're going to have people still being hired, but they're going to be at the top end of the industry, and those jobs, those lower end jobs that gave people experience and skill training and a route in, are going to be lost. And so again, it's up to us to actually give people those jobs so that they have a route in as well. Yeah, sorry.
That's a really good point. I like that.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the one thing I suppose that's missed from a lot of this is, if there's fully generated music made, it means there's less listening time given to people who are making their own music because the market's flooded. Same with all of the tools out there. If there's, session musician plugins, there's less ins for people to get into the industry and then get their footing and then make these decisions along the way, which is what would worry me the most, I think.
I remember when drum machines came out, all my drummer friends were kind of like, oh my God, well, that's it. We're out of a... Well, no, actually not that. I'm talking absolute nonsense. They kind of did the opposite. They kind of said, well, you never program a drum machine like a drummer. And what they ended up doing was working alongside the drum machines and coming up with a completely new sound, or programming drum machines in such a drummery way that was you couldn't just be a member of the public and go and do the same sorts of things. And I think that's one of the things that can be done with AI. The technology can be twisted and used in such a way that if you find your own voice with it, get stuck in. I've done some things with AI. I would say 80% of them are unlistenable, but I've managed to come up with a few things that are like, I've never heard anything like that before. I mean, Aphex Twin's done lots of this stuff 20 years ago, but that's not the point. But you can definitely come up with strange sounds and look, can you mutate that into this? And it does it. And if you've got that mindset of creating something original and fresh from you using a tool like AI, I think that'll put you in good stead, because that'll be original thinking, and that's going back into the machine. Like we said earlier, that will probably stop model collapse for a while. But I think that's important to have original.
But it's you controlling the creativity and using it as a tool only, rather than as
but it's also recognizing when something is good and unique,
right,
and jumping on that and filing that away in a folder and going, oh, I've never heard, that's really good, I like that, I'll use that for something else. So, and you can only really do that when you've done your 10,000 hours of experience. You'll sort of go, oh, that's quite fresh. That doesn't sound like anything else. I'll file that away. And then you're ahead of the game. So back to what we said again, having a unique voice, doing lots and lots of listening and training on your own work and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
To bring us somewhere a bit different, it hasn't had huge discussion anywhere yet. What do you think AI means for music education?
I looked at this question, and I mentioned it to the wife a bit earlier, and I really don't know what to say about it really. Other than, sorry, Arhynn, I know you're going to gather your thoughts, but back to the same thing. Get really good at composing. I mean, I never learned how to do notes and dots and things. There were kids in my school that were brilliant at football that could do that better than me, but then I could sit and improvise on a piano for 10 hours and they couldn't do that. So I never really had any theoretical training, and it hasn't hindered my career in the sense that I've always hired someone to come and write these out for me. And oh no, viola doesn't play there, it plays here. I think what do I think? I think that AI is just going to be another one of those tools where they're going to go, you've got a 2-inch tape machine, or you've got hard drive record, or you've got this, you've got that. Oh, and you've got this thing called AI, but we're going to use it in an interesting way. I think it should just be part of the curriculum. I know where the question's leading. It's like, well, what's the point of learning theoretical music and so on and so forth? I mean, Arhynn will have a lot more to say about this than I will probably. What does it mean for music education? It should just be treated as a tool. It should be part of the curriculum, I think. But I think the old school art, being able to write all that out and understand what instruments can do what and what ranges and all this, I think that's super important. That should never go. Arhynn's got
the fact that you think that I've got a lot to say about it.
Over to you, Arhynn. Or you think I'm just talking nonsense, but I don't, I can see.
I don't think you're talking nonsense at all, because you come at it from a different. So I'm classically trained. I did all the grades and all the diplomas and degrees and all of that stuff, and so I come at it from that. And I actually think there's been a move away from excellence in some kind of way. People, oh well, anybody can learn off of a YouTube video. But if you want to really be expert at something, I believe you need a teacher to teach you, to get you out of bad habits and that kind of thing. And I don't believe AI can do that. It teaches you facts. This is what a scale is. This is what, this is a composer who composed in the Baroque period or whatever. But can AI analyze how somebody's doing something and show them that they just have to shift their hand a little bit?
I think it will ultimately, yes.
Can it? So I'm hearing you, Lee, but also from another point of view, and a lot of teachers watching this will know what I'm talking about. When you're teaching, a lot of what you're doing is not imparting music, but you're teaching focus, you're teaching concentration, you're teaching the ability to reach your emotional depths. Sometimes a student will walk into a room, and this is even at the master's level, not knowing how to access something, and it takes a teacher to be able to analyze what it is that they're trying to access and actually give them the tools to get there. Now, that maybe in 100 years AI will do that, maybe sooner, but I think that's a very peculiarly human trait, to be able to actually understand a person and know what they need. So I do think teachers will be needed for the more.
What did you mean by the question, Ed, in a way?
I was just kind of picking, because obviously it's a big question in education overall. What will AI be like in education? Will it change assessments? Will it replace a teacher? Will teaching be completely different? I was also interested with the idea of accompaniment. So can you accompany with AI? Can you use it as a guide to your composition process when learning an instrument? Maybe when you're not in one-on-one lessons, you can use it as kind of your assistant teacher or something like that as well. I suppose the scope is endless. We have a lot of teacher members. they would be worried about what will my assessment process look like maybe with AI. But I suppose for instrumental education, it's a little bit different because it's a practical skill, and you can't chat GPT your way around it. You still have to put the hours in.
Yes, you can't chat GPT commitment and all of those things and discipline. They're things that you need to learn if you're going to do anything at all, really. And, I suppose in life, but particularly in music. If you're learning an instrument, you want to become virtuoso player, whatever you want to do, you need commitment and you need discipline to get those things. Now, AI is not going to tell you off, but someone sitting in a room with you probably will say, "Hey, stop doing that. You've got to start doing that." And I don't know. I think certain aspects of that are coming with AI, and I mean, it's a horrible, weird, horrible thing to think about. But yeah, imagine be learning violin with a robot violin teacher. I mean, that seems on the outset, from the outside, very unusual, but it's coming. It's absolutely coming. Whether it's going to be any good or not, whether everyone's going to sound robotic, whether there's going to be any element of humanity in that. That's what Aaron's saying about trying to keep it, making sure that we have responsibility for that, not to lose the humanity. Otherwise, we are screwed, basically.
Because there's also the whole philosophical idea of the fact that, so I'm going to bring in AI counselors, and apparently they're not very successful because they don't understand that they're not confrontational or understand the need for disagreement and stuff. So I'm just going to go back to the accompaniment thing and for example, the whole beauty out of getting two people or more to play together is that they're bringing something different to it and they don't necessarily agree. And what comes out of that friction that you mentioned, Ed, is this something spectacular that's, well, hopefully spectacular, way better than you could have predicted. And I think having an AI accompaniment is kind of just follow you and do your thing. It's just, to me, it's going to just dumb everything down. I really do think we need the struggle and friction in
I wonder what
all
AI
aspects.
I wonder what AI would have made of jamming with Miles Davis. It probably would have been like, look, you can't play that note, mate, because that's just really, but that's the whole point, isn't it? That's exactly what maybe you'll be able to program that element of humanity in eventually, but it's still not quite the same as the madness that comes out depending on your mood. Everything is nuanced, what kind of day you've had, if you're angry, if you're stoned, whatever it is, that all affects what you play and when you play it. And that sort of randomness doesn't really seem to exist within AI just yet. Maybe, hopefully it never will, but I don't know, who knows?
I suppose as well, music education is a privilege in a lot of places, and there might be no other option on the counselling front. I have seen people I know use ChatGPT for counselling. So even though we say and we know it's probably a terrible idea, people will
Does
still
it work?
Yes, but maybe it's the same way that like learning an instrument on an AI, you might say it works, but only because you haven't experienced what it's like to be in a room with a teacher if you don't know any better.
Yeah.
But all very interesting.
Mhm.
Quick final round off, then we'll go to some questions. This is your 1 minute pitch before we go to the election. What are your perspectives on the future of music creation?
Do you want to go, Aaron, or shall I make up some?
Go, you go, Lee.
I worry that music creation, let's say for commercial purposes, let's say, I think a lot of stuff is a race to the bottom these days. I think there's a lot of hit a spacebar, come up with a track, put a prompt in, come up with a track. Now, when the consuming public listen to that and then like it, you've kind of lost the battle. So it's our job to convince them that, look, human-made, great sounding music is so much better. You're going to get so much more emotion and stuff from it. I think that's like one of the key parts of that. Perhaps music creation shouldn't change. It should still be real musicians, but AI should be a tool that is in there, a bit like a tape recorder or something else, something that you turn to for a little inspiration now and again. I've worked on sessions where someone will put a vacuum cleaner on and listen to their track in a different room, and then there'll be some notes that jump out that you go, oh, I would never have thought of that if the vacuum cleaner wasn't turned on. So AI could be used as a tool for those things. I just think it's really important for us to keep it real, but use it as a tool. But I can also see a commercial world where, I mean, I read yesterday 22,000 tracks a day are uploaded that are AI created. Now, the moment that the public start to go, actually, have you heard that new track by, you know, Velvet Sundown or whatever? Oh, I love that. It's really great. And it goes to number one. And then you're sort of in a slightly weird, like, well, if an AI created that, humans still guided it, music creation then becomes something different to Stevie Wonder, Peter Gabriel. It becomes different. That journey is a completely different thing. So I'd like to see AI used as a tool. I, but I can also, the cynical part of me can also see it in the same way that we went from vinyl to CD to streaming. I can see how the public just kind of go, you know, whatever works, and that's bad, I think. So I keep it as a tool. Um, that's it. That's kind of all I've got, really. Don't make it the main, don't make it your main music creation platform if you can do it.
I'm going to say that the most important thing as an artist is to develop your voice in whatever way that happens. So to develop your voice, you follow what you like, what you enjoy, what inspires you, and you develop that and you become brilliant at that. And if that involves some AI, then go ahead and do that. And if it doesn't, then don't. I don't think we should be pushed into using AI if we don't want to. And I would say that to answer Ed, your question about the future, I think that, and this is a personal belief, so it might not be what ISM believes, but I think there's an existential crisis happening with this shift to AI and everything streaming and whatever, and people not communicating with each other. And I think it is up to us as artists, as musicians, to retain authenticity and to reach out and communicate with our audience, because that's how the world shifts. It's not going to shift with the politicians. I think it's up to us. So that's what I wanted to say.
Fantastic. Thanks a million, guys. We'll have a few questions now. So if anyone out there has questions, please get them in. We've a few pre-submitted ones. We've about 5-10 minutes. So question here that I'm going to move on from what you just said there. If AI uses our copyrighted music to learn, shouldn't we be credited and paid when it generates income from it? Which is something the ISM is championing. But is there any thoughts? I hope the thoughts are yes, but
My thoughts are obviously yes, but
Yes.
my thoughts are also with what we talked about earlier, the way that the British government have allowed anyone to scrape anything from anywhere at this point, copyright free or not, to basically catch up with where the rest of the world is. That's a very scary precedent, I think. How I'm a little bit cynical about whether transparency will ever occur. So it's a little bit of a touchy subject, really, because I think we've gone a bit too far, and I think it's really hard to pull it back. But yes, we should absolutely, definitely be paid.
100% we should be paid and credited, and if there's any opportunity for people to ask for that, or fight for it in some sort of way, whether it's some governmental thing, we should do it. Definitely.
Yeah, and do fill in that ISM survey. We use it for lobbying the government around these regulations. Another question, which is kind of getting at, is there any element of music that is safe, is how safe are melodies and lyrics?
I don't think they've ever been safe, really.
Yeah.
I think personally the reason that the music has gone very textural over the last however many years is because people feel unsafe doing the melodic material. It starts to sound like other things. So you need to, again, follow your voice, because only you will write a melody that sounds like you. But yeah, I don't think it's safe.
No, I think that's an absolutely valid point. I think you've nailed it. But I also think, having that restriction or having that that sort of cleaver hanging over you, or whatever the phrase is, where you kind of, oh, I don't want to, better not write a melody because it's very likely to sound like something else. I think that's horrible, and I think it's really stumps creativity. And I think a lot of that happened with, let's say, hip hop stuff from the 90s was using samples from all over the place, and they would credit them, and it would be great. A lot of the music was much more interesting because there was almost like a free reign. If you listen to DJ Shadow or stuff that he was doing, they were sampling from all over the place. And then suddenly the labels all clamped down, and that particular genre, I think, lost a lot of its kind of interesting creativity. So the moment that you start going, oh, don't ever try and write melodies because it's going to sound like someone else, or the AI police will be jumping down your throat, I think that's a horrible precedent to be set.
We have a question here. Are all art forms in danger?
That's a massive question. And it begs the question I always get into fights down the pub about, which is, long story short, can you quantify art? Is there such a good thing as good music, bad music, good art, bad art? I believe that there is, but who am I to say? I'm in no position to judge, but I do believe that. I don't know, Arhynn, what do you? I don't know. It's a tough one, isn't it?
They are going for all of art, and the reason they are going for all of art is because it's valuable. And I think we as creatives actually underestimate how valuable things are. But for example, streaming platforms have not underestimated it at all. They're generating a lot of money from art, good and bad, whatever. I think anybody who can see a way to make money out of art is coming for the art. So yes, all of it, from films, everything.
I think it feels like the same struggles that we're having with music are going to be across every creative platform, whether it's photography, fashion design, art, filmmaking. The same conversations will be happening right now, like we are having now, about where it's headed. Yeah, it's scary stuff, I think. And I think I'll go back to what I said earlier. The trick is to train the public to appreciate human-made art that has love, passion, commitment, all of those things. If you can try and show the public, look, this feels better than that, and hopefully they'll commit. But there's so much tech money and stuff being thrown into these things, the way people are consuming any form of creativity. We're kind of at the behest of the tech companies to a large extent, and that's slightly worrying because they used to they're calling music content instead of music and such like. It's not content, it's music. So yeah, we're in a bit of a tricky spot, and it's back to what Arhynn said. It's like, we've just got to convince them, keep it real.
I actually think we've got more power than we think, because if the entire creative world stood together and said no more, they'd be lost.
Yeah, but we're artists, aren't we? We can't even organise 5 of us to go down the shops.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So the chances of all the artists coming together and going, we're not going to create any more art, then the technology companies just said, well, we'll just create it ourselves then, because we'll just give the public what the public gets, what the public wants, in the words of, can't remember. But that doesn't stop us trying, does it? So
yeah, and I suppose especially with musicians, I've noticed with other art forms like visual media and writing, it's very obvious that good quality work has been made by these programs, and you can see it. But with music, people hear a clip of something like that Splice plugin and go, "Oh, it's all rubbish. It will never replace us," which isn't necessarily true. There is the other thing that music usually has a face behind it, whereas people mightn't know who their favorite author is or what they look like, or if it's a real person. But with their favorite artist or musician, they usually go and find out who the person is, wants to know more about their life. So I think that is the one thing. I want to see them perform live as well, which is a huge benefit for the music industry. One we touched on earlier, do you think the way composition courses work is done will need to be changed in GCSE and A level?
I would say 100% no. But people probably won't listen to me. But I think it's really important that people have proper education in the basics, and then only use AI when you know what you're doing. So for me, GCSE and A level should be 100% the self-generated stuff, learning the the building blocks of music, and then when you know what you're doing, then you go and use AI.
I agree. I've never done a
Yeah.
music course, so I don't really know what goes into it. I just got stuck in and said yes to everything and made every mistake imaginable, and I'm glad I did. But yeah, I think Arhynn nailed it.
We have a few more questions just about plugins, which we might be able to answer afterwards. But there's one here for you, Lee. What software do you use for loops and sound effects? And can you recommend any mixing and mastering tools?
Mixing is a really weird one at this point. It's not really there. Mastering will get you to a place that you think sounds good, and unfortunately, most people think it sounds good. Proper mastering is an absolute art. I do mastering, but I'm not a masterer. I've worked with proper mastering people, and they are legends, and they're very clever, and they bring a subtle humanity and a nuance to everything that they do, whereas the machine learning mastering. So I don't really use mastering or mixing plugins, but I know that they exist. I do a lot of work with a guy called Spike Stent, who's one of the top 3 mixers on the planet. If you look him up, Mark Spike Stent, you'll be astounded at the things that he mixes. But he's released a mixing plugin. So basically, if you can afford him, he's a bit like the A-Team. If you can afford him and you can find him, you can hire Spike Stent. But you can also get the sort of the faux Spike Stent, which does a very, very good job, uses a lot of his techniques and stuff to do mixing. So I'd recommend you check it out. I think it's called spike.ai. I think it's pretty cool. I don't think it's been released yet, but that's what he's working on. Loops and stuff, I've always used just real musicians. If I can, I'll go into a room and I'll jam for a few days and take it back to the lab and cut it all up. But when I need something like a sound effect, something instant, Splice is amazing for those sorts of things. Instant gratification. I try not to use big chunks of 4-bar patterns and things, but even if you do, you can cut them around and disguise them, and they'll inspire something else. Splice is great. The Descy stuff's really, really good, and I've been using a lot of stem splitting on Logic, because Logic's now really good at stem splitting. So a great example, recently someone said, a track that you wrote, have you got a vocalless version? I'm like, no. Oh, because if you can get it, we can get it on the telly because it's a sync thing. Let's go in, stem split it in Logic, sounded amazing, did a little bit of tweaking here and there. So Logic's amazing at those sorts of things. I really big up the Logic people too, because they're doing some amazing work. But lots of specialist stuff. I mean, like I said, Ed, every week there are 50 new plugins coming out. So literally go in, decide whether it's ethical or not, and then whether you want to dive in. But there's so many of these sorts of things now that you just have to go and get stuck in, really.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. That's all we have time for today. Very interesting discussion. I hope you found it useful. We will have another AI webinar coming up on the 20th of August discussing IP and copyright in the age of AI. This recording will be sent to you afterwards, and I will send the links to some of the plugins we've talked about. If you have any further questions about anything to do with the ISM Trust or the ISM, please get in touch at membership@ism.org. Thanks again, Arhynn and Lee, and I hope everyone has a lovely evening.
You're welcome. Have a good afternoon.
Yeah, welcome. Bye-bye.